training, individual reading plans. Exceptions are listed out for good causes. And it also requires instructional services to the retained students. So when students are retained for an additional year in third grade, there are certain requirements in the legislation of what needs to happen for that child. Our literacy team is tracking school districts that show a high percentage of second grade students scoring in the well below range, which is the range that would cause a student to be retained. The team is also offering supports to these school systems, which include face-to-face regional collaborations for system leaders to develop action plans to include intervention guidance, progress monitoring, and family communications. We'll have teacher leader summit sessions focused on how to best support second grade students who are scoring well below as they enter their third grade year to ensure that they progress enough to not be retained at the end of their third grade year. In this way, we're using our literacy screener as an early warning system to really flag for us those second graders who are in danger of being retained in third grade. A very critical piece of all of this work, and I think something that has already had significant impact on our state, is our Foundations of Literacy training. Act 108 of the 2021 legislative session requires kindergarten through third grade teachers and leaders to complete a science of reading training. We know that all of this is very heavy work on our educators, making sure that our children can read, making sure that our third graders can read so they are not retained, and if they are retained, that they receive all of the help and support that they need. And so we know we need to arm our educators with all of the knowledge and skills that they need to do this work. And so that's where Act 108 comes into play. The training of our kindergarten through third grade teachers and leaders has occurred over the last few years. And it all started with a literacy coaching pilot back in 2020, 2021, where we piloted some science of reading best practice training. And we learned a lot from that action research across our 13 pilot schools in the state. We then, with the passing of Act 108, we committed to funding the training through ESSER, and we identified through an RFA process 4 vendors to offer to school systems as a choice for them to choose one vendor of the 4 to provide training to their kindergarten through third grade teachers and leaders. For sustainability purposes and in looking ahead, we also committed ESSER funds to create our own science of reading training program. Not only will participants gain the knowledge of the science of reading, but also the art of teaching reading. They will gain the knowledge of how to implement their new learning in the classroom. We have a partnership with Louisiana Tech to engage with state and national experts to design the modules all around the science of reading. This will go live through our professional learning platform in the fall of 2024, and it will be made available free of charge to all educators, including our school leaders and our educator prep providers across the state. We have set a KPI, we set a goal on completion of the science of reading training. In 2022, only 9% had completed their training of those required, and we know in April of 2023, 47% of our K through third grade teachers and leaders had completed, but we knew that many were still working on their training. And so we now estimate through a variety of data sources, but not an official data collection, that around 75% of our required teachers and leaders have completed their science of reading training. We do have a target set for this May that 90% or more of our required kindergarten through third grade teachers and leaders will have completed their training, and our official data collection period will occur this May. We next want to make sure that we are acknowledging those folks who have really done the hard work of making sure that all of their educators have completed their training, and we have this slide showing over 90% completion of their Act 108 training. So we wanted to acknowledge these schools and school systems. And we also wanted to acknowledge the great work of those who are at 100% completion. So next we'll turn to some of our literacy tutoring projects. We have been engaged in multiple projects around literacy tutoring as we recognize how impactful high-dosage tutoring can be in increasing student learning. Teaching children how to read is multifaceted, and we know it is so important to have that core instruction in place, those daily lessons on grade level. But we also know that many of our students, both prior to COVID and then exacerbated by COVID, are left with a lot of gaps in their learning and in their literacy skills. And so we've talked and we've learned a lot. We have spread a lot of messages. We've trained a lot around how to appropriate deliver interventions. And we know sometimes those happen in classrooms by classroom teachers. They happen maybe by school system interventionists or literacy coaches. But we also know the need for additional hands on deck. And so our tutoring projects really help to supply that. And so this next KPI is based on our tutoring projects. It is based on multiple tutoring projects, including Steve Carter, REAL, Accelerate, and Ignite, all of which I'll talk a little bit more about in just a moment. But we set this goal that 25% of eligible students would be reached by one of our high-dosage tutoring projects. And our current state, we are at 21.5%. So we are supporting several high-dosage tutoring initiatives that occur both during and after school hours. Research has found that when tutoring is provided at a level of high dosage, meaning 3 or more times per week, and with certain features in place, it leads to increased learning for students. Some of those features include accessibility, frequency, the qualifications and training of the tutors, individualization, and the responsiveness to the individual student needs. And so our Steve Carter Literacy Tutoring Program is our family voucher program that I'll go into a little more detail about in the following slides. We also have our Real Literacy Tutoring Program, which is funded by a federal stimulus-related grant specifically for literacy tutoring that occurs after school or during the school day. Our Accelerate project is in partnership with Louisiana Kids Matter, and this is both a literacy and math tutoring pilot, and we're working in St. John, Natchitoches, East Baton Rouge, and Lincoln in this pilot, and we're utilizing Zern for tutoring, as well as BookNook as a tutoring provider for literacy. Our Ignite Literacy pilot is a partnership with TFA, Teach for America, and this happens during the school day, utilizing trained college students to provide one-on-one and small group literacy tutoring to students. And that's happening in East Feliciana, Point Coupee, Kenilworth, and IDEA in East Baton Rouge, in Orleans, in Elan Academy and Renew Laurel, and in Jefferson and Laureate Academy. And of course, our MIRA tutoring pilot is our AI, our artificial intelligence tutoring pilot. I was able to do a presentation, so I know the BESE members who were here in December, I was able to present more around Amira at our SIT committee. And Amira utilizes artificial intelligence to work with students grounded in the science of reading and address their needs as they read in a headset and microphone to the artificial intelligence. It coaches them through that. So it's also another really amazing pilot that we are running utilizing artificial intelligence. And that's happening all across the state. We started that pilot last year with our English learners, and we've continued it this year and expanded to non-English learners as well. With all of these pilots, we are collecting a significant amount of data with our partners, with third-party research vendors, to really learn more about the impacts of these individual programs across the state. But I wanted to dig in a little bit deeper next to our Steve Carter Literacy Tutoring Program. and just share with you what that is about. That comes from legislation several years ago that launched this program, really meant to provide families with options around tutoring for their children. And so it's for kindergarten through third grade students who scored below proficiency on the literacy screener, as well as students in fourth through fifth grade who scored below mastery in the English language arts portion of the most recent LEAP testing. Eligible students received information about the program from their respective schools, and they can register for the program through the state's online portal. Once approved, families may schedule virtual or in-person tutoring sessions with our state-approved tutors. Now have over 50 state-approved providers across the state. You can see next the in-person tutoring availability. We have received a lot of feedback from families across the state, from school systems, really with the desire for more in-person tutoring. And so we've been able to make more available over the last several months. As we approve tutoring providers, it's actually through an open oversight process that we now at this point continuously leave open. And as they apply, we're able to check their qualifications and roll them pretty quickly into that vendor guide. But we've absolutely been encouraging and seeking more in-person providers, as that's been a real need addressed by families. And although we have a smaller number of students taking advantage of this particular program, we have right around 1,700 students receiving tutoring at this point since the launch of the program last January. Those who are receiving the $1,000 digital tutoring voucher and engaging in the tutoring are really having a lot of success with it. We're hearing a lot of positive feedback from families who are engaging with the tutoring providers, and they're seeing growth in their child's literacy rates. So next, I just also want to acknowledge that we've had a ton of stakeholders really invested in our literacy work over the last few years. And we had an early literacy commission that was established back in 2019 that made recommendations to the department, BESE, and the legislature on key areas to improve literacy outcomes. This led to additional literacy legislation, specifically around K-3 literacy. And during the spring of 2023 legislative session, the commission was dissolved and the new Louisiana Literacy Advisory Commission was enacted. I think an important point about this was that the previous Early Literacy Commission only focused on our youngest learners. The new Literacy Advisory Commission is really meant to be birth through 12th grade. And so I think that's really helpful that we've now expanded the focus of this new commission. The commission has met 3 times and has begun to explore 5 key areas. And I believe you all at our last meeting received their initial report and recommendations. So it has really been a joy to work with all of the experts who have been on both our Early Literacy Commission and now our Literacy Advisory Commission as they consult and recommend in our work.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Dr. Jason, for that update. Very encouraging. Ms. Holloway.
Thank you, Jim. I have a question about, one question here, I have a couple of questions, but in regards to the Steve Carter, help me understand and clarify page 43, slide 29, the tutoring program. Here we're talking about the Steve Carter bill, but then underneath the tutoring programs, I see real literacy, and there accelerate literacy, etc. Are these programs being funded by the Steve Carter Literacy Program, or are they being funded by ESSA or another state? Help me understand, to clarify, what's the difference here?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So The legislation that enacted the Steve Carter Literacy Tutoring Program did not provide a state appropriation. And so we as a department made the decision to commit $40 million to tutoring. And so we, of ESSER dollars, of our state set aside dollars from ESSER. And so we were able to make that commitment. It did obviously cost some funding to launch the program and also to engage in the tutoring.
Steve Carter.
To launch the Steve Carter program, build the online portal, and then also fund the tutoring that has now taken place. But obviously it has not taken $40 million. I think about 1,700 kids currently utilizing the program, and we launched last January. So we have used ESSER funding for a few of these other projects, including the Accelerate project, the Ignite pilot, and Amira. The real literacy tutoring program is actually funded by another stimulus, a federal stimulus grant. It's an Education Stabilization Fund grant. And that federal grant is specifically for literacy tutoring. So that's actually outside of ESSER, but the other projects are all funded by ESSER.
And the providers decide which one they want, or they apply for?
They apply. So it depends on the program, but the providers have to go through an approval process in order to be a provider in one of our programs.
So then it takes me to the map. When I look at the map, and of course I'm focusing on my district, let's just use LaFouche and LaFouche. And I'm looking at what they're providing is virtual. I'm not understanding what this is about. Help me understand, if it's a Steve Carter Bill program with providers in LaFouche, why is it virtual?
So this map is only showing the providers available for the Steve Carter program. LaFouche is using some of the other programs as well. Like I know LaFouche is implementing Amira within their schools. But for Steve Carter, it's about which providers are applying to be part of the program. And so in LaFouche at this point, we have had providers who are virtual apply and make it through the process.
And they're in our schools, our school district, or is it?
No, the
independent?
Steve Carter is the program meant for families. And so families are registering if their children are eligible in that online platform and then selecting a provider based on their area and what's available to them. And so the Steve Carter providers are not necessarily in our schools. This is family choice in order to register and select a provider after school hours.
Can I follow up on that? So obviously tutoring is a major program going forward, and we hope to add math to it, which we're going to get to in a little bit. It looks like all funding is being cobbled together. For instance, you talked about the stimulus. That money's going to expire sometime. I don't know when. When?
Is it September?
September.
So, so that one's going to go away. Do we have an effort underway to create a long-term funding structure for tutoring? This is a general, I'm sorry.
Turn on your mic if you press the.
Do we have a long-term funding structure plan for tutoring in general, and to include math later? I'll let you.
No, that's also a great question. We have seen legislation last year or the year before that essentially called for school systems to provide additional support to kids if they were under a certain level of academic performance. I believe we'll see an expanded version of that legislation during this upcoming session because there is so much interest right now in tutoring. And the way in which we have been thinking about tutoring, and we spent a lot of time on this, is being able to say to kids and families that if their child needs additional help, we're going to provide them additional help. And we think about that both through the school day with tutoring, and then also options like Steve Carter that provide vouchers for after school with private providers to do support. And as you rightfully call out, all of that requires funding. We have essentially used a collection of grants and ESSER and different funding sources to provide for these services over the last few years, but that money is going away. So we are in conversations right now, both with the administration and legislators and advocates around the need to be able to use some of our federal dollars that are essentially recurring to us, title dollars, et cetera, but also being able to commit state-level funds for this particular project. We had no idea when we launched. Steve Carter's only a year old. The program's only a year old. So whenever you look at the map, you see you don't have in-person providers everywhere. It's just going to take time to build that infrastructure. But we had no idea what the dollar amount might be when we launched it because we didn't know how many providers would apply, how many families would be interested. And so now we have a pretty good sense of what that would cost every year. We think that to do Steve Carter for reading and add math and essentially go, K-12? K-12, it's about a $5 million allocation annually to be able to provide that for the families that we think would show interest. These other options that we're talking about, I think are going to also require an identified funding source to continue, but I don't think it can be just one source. I don't think it can just be, state general funds or local funds. It's got to be a combination of that plus title funds for low-income communities and schools. And so we are working through all of that, but we do believe it is going to take some form of state appropriation if we're going to take this to scale. And that's a conversation that we're going to have to embark on with you all over the next few months as we talk through priorities.
Well, this is obviously an imperative. It's working, we know it's working. You've got national data showing it works. I would suggest that we, as BESE, working with LDOE, craft an integrated strategy both on programs we want to go forward with and try to come up with some model of funding, long-term funding, so that we're not subject to the whims of the federal government that's going to give us some money for 2 years and take it away after that. I'm thinking long-term. And of course, you got to integrate math into that too. So that's my suggestion.
No, I mean, we are, I'm glad you're asking that, and I'm even more excited about the fact that you want to think about integrating that moving forward, because that's what we're talking about consistently. We've been thinking about this for some time, and the best way to approach it in the most economical way possible for the taxpayers. And so we are thinking a lot about that, and this board, alongside our team, will be having more conversations about this in short order. Thank you.
Ms. Armstrong.
Quick questions, I think. The first one's just a quick data question. On your third grade growth chart, are those like fall of 2022 and spring of 2023 same students? Or are they different classes? Class of 2022, class of
On the
2023?
LEAP data slide, those are two different cohorts.
Okay, so it would be different, so we couldn't show an individual student growth because we're looking at two different classes.
That's not what that data slide is showing. I do know, I don't remember off the top of my head how much our fourth grade ELA scores grew, but I do remember that they did grow as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that cohort did grow from third to fourth grade as well.
Okay, good. Other question?
Armstrong, too, on that point, the reason we wanted to call out this particular slide too is because so much of the work that has happened legislatively and that has happened over the last few years was around that early literacy work. And so this is the first time that those third graders on ELA that the state saw growth since 2017, 2018. And so that's why we wanted to call out this particular piece, because it also aligns to the third grade retention bill that's going to hit for next year's students. So that's why we call it this particular one.
The other question, your NAEP assessment reports, are those just public school students or public and non-public?
Yes, it's just public.
Just public? And then moving forward with the tutoring, I know we don't have it yet, but should we move in the direction of ESA school choice, will that tutoring be provided across the board, or is it just staying within public schools?
Jenna, I need two microphones. That will depend on the way in which that instrument is crafted. There are different views around how a particular ESA instrument might be crafted, and it certainly could include the option for tutoring for a family to debit their account for tutoring at the beginning, or it could roll that on at a certain point down the road. So it's really just going to depend on the way in which that particular instrument is crafted.
Mr. Small.
And my questions were along the lines and comments on Mr. Hill's is the funding mechanisms. It brought to, I know y'all are probably working on this, but have y'all actually scrubbed all of the programs to say that maybe the legislature has implemented, some that aren't working as well as what these are going to bring us to? And if so, what are y'all doing with those funds? I know a long time ago, programs were funded through the legislature with not a lot of thought on ongoing programs with one-time money. So without a lot of thought of the programs that maybe were not working as well, that should not have been funded, and moving that money over, or asking the legislature, asking BESE to write a policy to ask the legislature not to continue funding those projects programs because they weren't working, where these will work. So are y'all actively looking at ongoing programs that possibly are being funded through the legislature that aren't going to work as well as these before we go to the legislature and ask for additional dollars? I'm concerned we will have a deficit. I mean, we've talked about this for years. Right now we have a lot of federal dollars coming in, but these are ongoing programs, which are really good programs. I'd like to see stay.
Yeah, so, all funding here as an agency is overwhelmingly simply what is legislatively appropriated for a particular program. And we'll complete a fiscal note for the legislator who is choosing to do a particular program and we'll implement that. And the same is true for our staff. We get certain amounts of TOs and unclassified to do the work. You're asking really your question about like academic return on investment, like of these things that are happening, what's the result? What's the impact? I don't know that we have an ongoing formalized study around that, but we're happy to begin embarking on something more formal with that.
And that will be something that, for myself going forward, is some of the questions I will ask. Are these programs we're funding and are they working before we go and ask for additional dollars?
Yeah, and as you well know, oftentimes our great legislature will have a desire for a program that may or may not align to desires of the Department of BESE that they successfully navigate through a process.
Right. And that was my reason behind the fiscal notes, so that BESE can also maybe make some recommendations to the legislature, because they may not be thinking in those broad terms like we may be thinking.
Yeah, and I think there's also going to be a really good opportunity this year through session, if we see those types of things, for BESE to take positions on certain instruments, rather to approve or support or not, or amend in some particular way. So we'll have a process developed, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, where BESE can formally weigh in on all these types of issues.
Thank you, Dr. Roman.
Other members? Dr. Clark?
Quick question, when we're looking at the economical part of it and the elementary class structure, are we offering any assistance to making sure like the schools and the districts are restructuring that elementary school day? Because that, I mean, if you look at 741, the only thing they have to offer is the art and the PE. So you still have 6.5 hours, because looking at the disadvantaged children and time on task versus learning, can we make sure that we're putting some of this in the actual day for the kids that need additional interventions? Because they could just get reading and math the entire day and adding in those couple of hours during the week for the other items we have to, according to 741, just in case we don't get the money and they want to go home.
Yes, Dr. Clark. We have actually received more questions than ever lately from our school leaders and school system leaders about how to appropriately schedule their day, around some of this most impactful work. We've done a lot of work over the last several years in producing staffing and scheduling guidance, providing trainings, hands-on sessions with school leaders and creating their schedules, but we have so much more work to do. We're actually working right now to refine some of that staffing and scheduling guidance that we've been able to produce. And we're thinking about ways that we can more effectively communicate and support our school leaders in crafting schedules, because as you know, it's not easy to craft a school schedule, and one that hits just right and includes all the things that need to be included. There's a lot of competing priorities within a school day. And so that's absolutely something that we have taken seriously the last few years in providing guidance around that, what we plan to do even more in the future.
I think that's good.
Ms. Miller?
Hi. First, I want to thank you guys for providing the information about the schools that have 90% and 100% completion of the science and reading programs. Would it be possible for you to provide us with a breakdown parish by parish where each parish stands with their completion rates? I think that'd be helpful for us.
Absolutely, we're happy to get y'all that.
Thank you.
And I
Ms.
think
Holloway.
some of our leading schools are left out, because I texted them, they said they have 100% completion rate. I just-
And it might have been, Dr. Clark, after we collected this even. Because we collected this prior to like the holidays in preparation for the January BESE meeting.
Yeah, we could add, might need to add that to the spot here.
Ms. Holloway, you had another thought?
Same thought as when I was speaking about the page 20, slide 29 and the map. The question here, which the tutoring programs that I asked about is new to me. Like I wasn't aware of the additional tutoring programs that were available. So the question here is, do all schools have access or have made access to this program? And including parents, are parents aware of these programs for their children? Which leads me to knowing about the Steve Carter bill, knowing about how legislature was so supportive of this. And there was a physical note attached at that time that indicated that they suspected or assumed that with the measurement that there was like 160,000 students that could have access to the Steve Carter bill. So when you do the math, times $1,000, where are we? How many students are in the Steve Carter program? And how much money do we have left? And why is it that if, I don't know the number, I'm assuming it's not many, because there are many parents that are not aware of this program to have access to it. And what are we doing about that?
Sure, we've done a lot of communication. We have worked with LPB. We have really launched a communication strategy across the state. Paid for ads on social media, really done radio commercials. We've really tried to broadcast information about Steve Carter in lots of different ways. We've also greatly encouraged our school systems to get the word out. We've produced different flyers and ways for school systems to give notifications to families about Steve Carter. And we're at about 1,700 students currently engaging in Steve Carter tutoring sessions.
Out of 160,000
Statewide.
statewide?
Statewide. So we will continue our communication, our messaging. Like Dr. Brumley noted earlier, the program is about a year old. These other programs, it depends on the program as to how school systems were selected. REAL in particular is a program that was open to all school systems across the state. They were able to request funding in order for us to allocate that out to them and for them to choose providers to use it. Accelerate and Ignite were a little different in that we reached out to certain school systems depending on different needs of those programs and the project. There were some things around, specifically around the research parameters that we had to do some selections there. And then Amira as well has been open to every school system in the state. If they wanted funding, they were able to request it, and we allocated that.
Well, this thought just came to me, and I've spoken with you about it, about the Steve Clark program and providers out in the state that have had difficulties with the requirements, with the high, I guess, the standard, and having that opportunity to provide tutoring to locals. And I'm going to tell you, it's happened in my district, where parents apply to this particular provider, however, they weren't approved because of the steps that they had to follow, like 40 hours of literacy training. And so it provided a hindrance, a burden to the provider. And you're looking at someone that is a professor with literacy that has to go through this training. So this, what's that?
Even if they're, and I'm,
Oh, yeah, I know, true, yeah, even though the professors,
that doesn't even know how to.
well, it's because what's happening is preventing a burden on providers to allow parents who live in a local area that can't have this provision and have to travel 30 to an hour away. So I was just bringing that thought, maybe that's why parents are having difficulties in having this opportunity because of providers not being able to have that approval and something to do with it.
Yeah, so we've heard two specific things, Ms. Holloway, to that point from providers, because we've reached out to providers across the state to ask them to apply and be part of the program. Some feedback that we've received has been the criteria,
That's the word.
the qualifications that we look for in order to approve the providers. One is that the tutors have to have engaged and completed their science of reading training, just like our kindergarten through third grade educators. They also have to be certified teachers, and so that is a high bar for a tutor. However, that's written into the Steve Carter legislation, so that's not something that we've been able to change. That would have to be, legislatively changed should, folks desire to make that adjustment in the legislation. But we follow the legislation with that higher criteria for Steve Carter. The other thing that we've heard from some providers as we've reached out across the state and asked people, especially our in-person providers, to go through the process and become providers for the program, is that our rates may not meet what they can charge privately. And so if they have, if they are at capacity in the students that they are serving and they are charging a very high private rate, they may not want to be part of the program and charge our rate that might be lower than theirs. We have really done a scan across the state and tried to make a rate that is competitive so that providers want to participate, but we also recognize the limits of that $1,000 voucher, and we want to make sure we are really being stewards of that money and that children are able to access as many hours as possible within that $1,000 digital voucher. And so we've really had to balance the approach there. But we are taking a look at our rates because we did establish those a year and a half ago when we were first planning for the program. And so with inflation, we know costs have risen, including the cost of tutoring. And so there are some providers who have raised their rates. And so we are considering, perhaps it is time, in the next few months to raise those rates to ensure that maybe more providers would want to join the program.
Ms. Holloway, I would add too, to Dr. Chason's point, really the bar, the barrier, but also the safeguard that was put into the legislation is that science of reading training, which you mentioned. I mean, it is extensive. And so really it's just a question of, with the continuation of the program, is there a need for an adjustment to that particular piece? But, we can have conversations around that, and I've heard from both sides. Some people say, well, if you take that away, you get more tutors, and other people say, well, if you take that away, you're reducing the safeguard that the individuals know how to teach with the science of reading. So it's a conversation that we can have, but frankly, that is one of the reasons why the map looks like it does today. But I also want to point out it is a new program that's only a year old, and so we have to continue to build out the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Good stuff. Actually, one note on that subject. We were just chit-chatting over here. Being a certified teacher could be the big hurdle. If we could maybe say if you got a college degree or a 2-year degree or something and had the 40 hours training, that would be satisfactory. So, I mean, that's a policy decision that we could recommend to the legislature. Because I've heard that too, that there are a lot of people who are very educated who would like to teach, help, and they can't overcome the hurdle of the certified teacher. Anyway, just a thought. My real question though was.
Can the teachers do that though, in the
I'm
school
sorry?
system? You think that, can the teachers qualify that are already in the schools to provide the tutoring because they've received the trainings?
Yes, the teachers in the schools can apply through our process to be a vendor, and then they can serve the students after hours through their own company, essentially.
Okay, because I know a lot of districts, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but a lot of districts offer after-school tutoring to all their students for free. And we've gotten a lot of calls about this because some parents sign up for this or opt into it, thinking that they're going to get the reading training, or the reading tutoring, but it's a whole different tutoring process. Because I've had some complaints where the parents have called and said, they're not tutoring them in reading, they're doing whatever math they're working on or whatever in their classroom. So I think your idea about a study, Dr. Gorman, would be a good idea to see what districts are offering currently and how we can piggyback on some of that.
Because I know a lot of civic-minded folks that are highly educated. They're not going to go back and get a certification to teach, but they might be willing to do the 40 hours and then they probably work for free. They probably wouldn't have to have a charge. This would be a civic thing.
Just personally, for this moment in time, I do think that probably would be more of an appetite around the certification issue than the removal of the science of reading issue in terms of what barrier could be removed.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
My real question is the fourth pillar of your opening slide was parental impact. And I was watching carefully as we went through this, and I know the only thing that seemed to be related to parental impact was that we were sending a report at one point after the children were evaluated. Is there any way to measure what happens in the home after, say, that report goes home? In other words, does it just go home and the parent throws it in the trash can, or do we know what the parents are actually doing, or is that being naive?
I don't know how we would know, but I'll also add that beyond just the parent reporting, we have created many parent resources that are available on our website and are available for schools to send home or make available at their open house, at their literacy night. We call these our grab and go activities, and they're meant to be really family-friendly one-pagers for families to be able to use to engage in literacy activities in the home. So beyond just the parent reporting, we have created a lot of really high-quality resources.
Do we ask that the parent send a response, if they at least read the report, and this is what they have an action plan at home to take?
So that would depend on the individual school, but what is required is that parents are a part of the reading improvement plans for kindergarten through, and that's in policy, that parents have to be a part of those individual reading improvement plans for students reading below grade level. So the policy says that parents have to be made aware and have to be a part of that plan.
Dr. Brumley, didn't we also make an investment with the literacy school, $7 million to address parental engagement?
Yes, sir. So there was a legislative line appropriation to that center that there was a flow through your agency and BESE for family engagement around literacy. Yes, sir.
Well, clearly, it's important because it's the fourth pillar of your program. So, and yet it's difficult. I understand the difficulty.
Yeah.
It's just, but if it's that important, I guess the schools themselves have to engage. But it just seems like to me that that's one of the biggest hurdles we have, and we can't expect teachers to be parents, and that's a problem. So parents can't or won't do what's necessary, I mean, I guess there's nothing we can really do about it, but it seems to be that that's a critical element of all education. Anyway, thank you.
But we should get some feedback on our $1.7 million investment, I would expect. Dr. Brown, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that was a line item appropriation from the legislature. We disseminated that, I think, either in December or January, and we can certainly get information back as that goes into effect. Yes, we're happy to do that.
Thank you for that. Mr. Burkett?
So just a question on the KPI, page 40, the literacy foundation skills instruction course. How long is that training for the science of reading, the teachers? How
It's
many
about
hours?
approximately 40 hours.
40, it is the 40 they were talking about. Okay. We had talked about how important it is, and especially with regards to the legislation on the third grade. You can't read, you can't pass, all of that. And it seems to me that the most important thing for K1, 2, and 3 is to really put forth major effort in reading and math to the point of double blocking that, because if you can't read, you can't succeed, and you're not going to get past third grade. I would like to ask and suggest and direct the Department of Education to put together a resolution indicating to all superintendents and principals and stakeholders in all of the different districts that suggest or to say from the BESE, from this body, that they would double block reading and math in K1, 2, and 3, and put forth something to that effect. I know a lot of them do it already. Some do not. But if we can get them to devote that much time to reading, especially, and then math besides, I think we would be so much better off. This is a long-term game plan that's not going to help the ones that are already in 5th, 6th, 8th grade, whatever. But I think it would create a foundation and would help us into the 4th grade and leap scores in the short term, and then helping throughout their whole life, obviously. In conjunction with that high dosage tutoring, I don't think we can expect get these kids past the 3rd grade without some type of high dosage tutoring if they are still falling behind, even with the double blocking. But I would love to see a resolution go out to all of the districts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a strong idea. I would like to hear a little more, maybe from the rest of the board, around some of the content that might be included in that. I think that what you've outlined there is important, both from a core content standpoint and core time, but also the tutoring time. And our team, we can happily work on something like that with our program staff and with our legal team and bring something back. I think it's a really good topic to maybe spend just a few minutes on with the board and hear what else might need to be included in something such as that.
Ms. Armstrong?
So, I haven't been here recently, but am I correct that half the instructional day is devoted to our ELA and math by 7:41, or is that just on public?
No, really, local educational agencies have the ability to set their own timing for different subjects. They just have to meet overall the amount of instructional minutes across the school year. And so throughout the school day, they may say, we're going to spend 15 minutes on science, and then 90 minutes on math, and then 120 minutes on reading. So they establish that on their own. There are certain instances where they do have to have required minutes. For instance, recess. They have to have 15 minutes of recess. There's some things around PE. There are certain content areas that have to be taught during the day. There's a list of those things. But in terms of just like minutes devoted to different content areas, really, that's, at this point, that's a local decision.
Members, other comments to Mr. Birkin's proposal for a resolution? So,
You want that brought in March, a resolution for the board to approve? I'm getting this.
If we could, that would be great, yes.
Ms. Holloway?
I'd like clarity for him to repeat, what is he requesting?
Mr. Birkin, ball's in your court.
I think what I heard is just basically signaling to local school systems that you or this board believes that elementary foundational reading, math are really important, and to make sure they're devoting appropriate time to that in their schedule, including tutoring is what I heard, but maybe you want to be more specific than
That's
that.
great. I've talked to all of my superintendents in my district, and there's some that's already what they call it, double blocking the reading and math. It just seems like to me there's nothing else that's more important at that grade level than learning to read, because after 4th grade and beyond, they say, didn't you read? So in 4th grade and in 8th grade leaps and all of that, are they really not proficient in science and history, or is it that they cannot read and understand those tests and being able to pass those? I believe the latter, that might be the case in a lot of instances. So in speaking with my local superintendents, and some of them already are double blocking or spending a lot more time on the reading and math. But if we could get that as kind of as an idea going out throughout the state, then I think as a state, we will be so much better off. And that will move us, even from where we are 42nd, I think then that will move us in a higher ranking and help us all throughout the thing, all throughout the whole learning process. I believe the appeals process that went forward in December had a lot to do with something that's happened a lot earlier in their school year, school life, that they weren't prepared as readily as they should be. And so I think this would help with that, to get them more prepared. And if anyone falls behind, and we have the tutoring that goes along with this. A lot of these school districts are going to 4-day school weeks. Would love to see the 5th day being able to help with this type of remediation and high dosage tutoring type of thing. I know it's comes with a cost, but I think that would move us in the right direction.
So perhaps you could bring that resolution to March, BESE, and perhaps with some data to support some of those best practices in other parts of the state for the board's consideration.
Absolutely. Dr. Brumley has suggested that their team would be able to put something together going through legal for us to look at, and we look forward to
I
that.
don't know that we would need a motion for that, but we could just ask Dr. Brumley and his team to bring us a resolution.
Yeah, I think for something like that, I would want to take it through our program team, like through our literacy and our math team, for them to look at it, to make sure it is best practice. And then I want to take it through legal to make sure we're not infringing on some law that is in place around the time we will look at it.
Question.
Thank you for that, Ms. Holloway.
Yeah, I'd like to, Mr. Perkins, to clarify, what do you mean by double blocking?
From what I understand, if
And also, what grade levels are you referring to?
K1, 2, and 3.
K1, 2.
Because in 3rd grade, that's where the law takes place.
That is correct. So tell me about double blocking. How do you
Well,
understand?
what I understand, and I wasn't a teacher, but what they said, a block of time that they spend on a particular subject. Some of them are already using 120 minutes on reading. So I took to mean a block was like an hour and 50-minute, 60-minute class schedule, which is typically a block schedule, right? Is that correct? And so double blocking would be twice as much, or a 2-hour time frame on reading and math. So approximately, depending on what they want to do, 4 hours per day of reading and math, and then the rest used on other, in those grades. Because it seems like to me there's nothing more important than being able to teach them to read so that the rest of their school life they can comprehend and understand.
I'll just add, through experience and even working through the state, majority of our schools are doing something similar. They don't call it double blocking, but I'm telling you that our schools are adding like 90 plus or to 120 minutes of reading and math a day. And that's not including the tutoring time of 30 minutes to 45 minutes if they're doing it appropriately. And also, there's a lot of integration happening within the school. It may not be 2 blocks of math, but they're teaching reading in the science, reading in the social studies, reading in math. And it's an all day of instruction of teaching children how to read. So I just need more information, and I appreciate you looking into that, Dr. Bromley.
Yeah, I'll work with Mr. Birkin on this, and I'll try to keep everyone informed as we look at language. I'm seeing this more as a signaling of reading and math being important and less of a mandate to do something.
Yes.
But I'll be happy to, I'll work with Mr. Birkin since he brought it up. He'll take the lead with me, but I'll keep everyone informed.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Chloe?
I agree with the suggestion of the double blocking for the intervention, but I think we want to be careful about micromanaging schools. Making sure all kids don't learn the same way every day. And so there may be kids where, again, learning and time on task are 2 different things. And for some kids, after about 30 minutes, they have zoned out. You have to give them a break. You can bring them back. You might come back tomorrow. And making sure that whole balanced language is in there, because even once I learned through the science of reading, I may demonstrate my comprehension through art or another means. So I just think that we have to be careful with how we do it and mandate it. So maybe a great suggestion with the creation of how to create a new school day and a new structure for elementary schools, because even when I look at the elementary schools, and you can look at their schedules online, they're still doing it the old way with the 5 or 6 subjects, right? And so I just think that we can talk to them about restructuring their day, but I would never want to be responsible for directing that you double block and your scores and the performance and the growth doesn't move, and they're like, but you told us to do it that way. But we know that doesn't work, but you told us to do it, and now we're going to hold you back accountable. I think we have to give them that autonomy, trust them, give them strong suggestions with best practices, because it's easy to throw it out, but if there is no research base to make sure, even with the tutoring, that it works, I think the department needs to be very careful about giving those directives.
Further comments? Thank you.
I think that we have a really good team, and we can take this particular suggestion and position it in a place that we can have comfort with across the board. Because I agree with you on the autonomy piece, particularly, well, I agree with you on that autonomy piece.
I wasn't suggesting that we micromanage at all. What suggesting, and Dr. Brumley knows better than I how to word all of this, but the appropriate amount of time as a resolution and not as a policy for them.
Great discussion. Ms. Melmer?
If I may, at one point, I know Mr. Birkin was not looking to micromanage schools. I don't believe that at all. But at the same time, I'm hesitant to, I'd like to signal a best practice and a focus on early literacy and early math, which I believe, Dr. Brumley and his team are really doing a strong thing right now, promoting that legislatively across the board. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that children are whole people, and we want to raise good citizens and people that can do a bit more than just basic math and reading. We're educating a whole child. So in the shuffle, I don't want to see something where we set a precedent where every child is being treated like a low performer. I want kids to have the option to integrate some of those other subjects in, those reading, those maths, those humanities. I think those are important for kids to learn as well. I don't want to lose focus if we just get so narrow on English and math that we don't make kids love learning too, and we handicap our teachers and really tie their hands in the classroom. But I do think it is something that we should signal that these are our 2 priorities, reading and math. They're fundamental to everything else. I just don't want to lose sight of the whole picture and the whole child.
Great comments, members. Any other comments from members before we go to public comment? All right, I just have one question.
We still have another half of the presentation.
Oh my goodness, well, I still have one more. Well, I know there's some folks here that do want to speak specifically to the literacy, so can we give them an opportunity, public comment on the literacy? Great, great. So I just had one question, that was on slide 29, with regard to the funding and Ms. Holloway's questions. My understanding is the ESSER funds predominantly cover most of this, and they do expire in September. Given that expiration date, how long will these programs actually be in place in the schools?
As of now, our directive around ESSER from our federal program partners over ESSER is that services must be rendered by September 30th. So the tutoring must be provided and take place prior to September 30th.
So these programs will not be available, obviously, fall 24?
Yes, unless a new funding source is identified.
Okay,
And I
great.
believe REAL is the same timeline for that expiration.
Okay, great clarification. Superintendent, members, I know we have a number of folks in here that are trying to manage their time for the next item on our agenda. I want to respect that. I'm wondering if there's an option here to break on this at this point, get the public comment on the literacy issue, and then move the math component later in our agenda so that we can give these folks an opportunity to cover item 4 on our agenda.
Do we need to move?
Could we do that?
Sure. Do we need to move?
Okay, I just want to check the superintendent's team first. Ms. Holloway, I got a motion on that. Do I get a second? Dr. Clark, thank you. Is there any opposition to that motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, we still need to get public comment on the literacy component. So I've got 2 comment cards here. So if we could get those folks to come forward. First one I've got is Amanda Benson. Amanda's got information and she wished to speak.
Good morning. My name is Amanda Benson. I'm the founder and CEO of Studyville, and we are a Steve Carter Literacy Tutoring Program provider. This is my colleague Georgina. She is our microschool director and head of our literacy program, and she has done the 55 to 70 hours of Act 108 training, so it is more than 40. But I wanted to speak a little bit about what we're seeing on the ground for Steve Carter. And I want to thank the Department of Education for funding this initiative because we are getting great feedback from the families who know about it. We are currently tutoring 81 families in the Steve Carter program. Studyville has physical locations in East Baton Rouge Parish and Rapides Parish, and we can mobilize our tutors to just about anywhere. We mobilize our tutors out of state to Georgia and North Carolina. However, our challenges are people not knowing about the program in existence. So we have met with schools who did not know that this was an option. We have offered to give them flyers. We are currently starting to work with the YWCA in Rapides Parish and the YMCA in East Baton Rouge Parish to provide tutoring at their after-school programs because the students are already there. Several of those students already qualify for the Steve Carter Literacy Program, and it mitigates the transportation issue that some of these families would have. Metrics on self-reporting for Steve Carter, we were not given any guidelines for that, and so we created our own metrics that Georgina can speak a little bit about for gauging improvement in fluency, accuracy, words correct per minute, and comprehension. All of this came from her Act 108 training. There is allegedly a portal that we cannot access for the science of reading that we are hoping we can work with the Department of Education and the BESE board to gain access to that so that our tutors can then input all of our metrics from that student that the department could see and that the teachers can see. We can absolutely scale. Our challenge is the Act 108 training, which we did get trained to train. So we're working with the department. The department has been really great about working with us when we present challenges to them. But it is 55 to 70 hours worth of tutoring, which could be about $2,000 per tutor that I hire. No one knows about the program. people know about the program. We would like more people to know about the program. And the rate is about half of what we can get in the private market. So those are the challenges we face. But I will say I had a parent come to me and she said, I want to do a video testimonial for you because this has been such a good program for me. Their confidence is up, their comprehension is up, they're doing better in all their other subjects because they have confidence in reading. So please, please, please help us keep this program alive and sustainable. And Georgina and I are here if you have any questions.
I had one. You mentioned that you're keeping your own metrics, so I was curious what are your metrics telling you?
So I noticed when we started receiving Steve Carter students that we weren't given any feedback on how to track progress. So internally we came up with our own assessment, just a basic phonics assessment, our words correct per minute, an accuracy score, a fluency score, and a reading comprehension score that I just developed from my own experience, and we've already started tracking and seeing, we're already seeing improvement. We're doing assessments monthly on our repeat, high dosage tutoring students. We have that.
Sounds like positive feedback. Members, any other questions?
Right. I can tell you some of the data I'm looking at right now. One child came to us with 30 words correct per minute in the 3rd grade. 4 weeks later, he was at 43 words correct, and then 68. We had a student go from 98 to 132. Phonics going up 51% to 72% accuracy. We're not to grade level with these kids, but we see consistent improvement. One of the other challenges, and I think it's important to keep tutoring separate from in-classroom instruction and the metrics that we show, because if we're measuring for a 3rd grader passing the EOC's literacy ELA test in March or April, and they're coming to us and we're seeing them and they have no phonological awareness, we're not going to get that child to pass the LEAD EOC. And so I think clear goals for tutoring and clear goals for in-classroom instruction in regards to literacy is important.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
So these children are continuing to learn, so they're continuing to learn.
They're going
and
up. They're well, we're seeing students who are well below.
Okay, and so kids that you're tutoring are here. How long is it taking to meet, to get them up to where they are in the classroom? Do you know that yet?
I'll have to get back to you on that. As we've stated, it's a year, it's been a year. And they have 25 tutoring sessions with us, and we're just now starting to see some families trying to renew and running into, we're having to figure out how to get them renewed. I don't know exactly, but I can quantify that data and get it to you.
Okay. Other members? Thank you so much. Really appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you for coming out today and sharing it with us.
I just want to clarify that we are able to, the metrics that we're using for Steve Carter is we are able to extrapolate data because we have the data from the screener and the LEAP results. So we know which children are involved in Steve Carter. And so we're going to be able to see their growth over time from one screener assessment, one LEAP assessment to the next if they're a part of the Steve Carter program.
Thank you. I have one other public comment. Ms. Lauren Witzon.
Good morning. I'm excited to be with you to share a little bit about Teach for America's Ignite pilot. So you saw that a couple of screens back. I just want to first acknowledge the department for their partnership. You all have just been incredible thought partners in helping us scale Ignite to more students and more schools. If you all are familiar with Teach for America, you might know that for the past 33 years, our work has been focused on recruiting, supporting, and developing talent for schools and school systems. And so within those core capabilities, we thought we could actually play a mighty role in activating college students through a selective process and getting them involved in increasing literacy proficiency rates. And so that is what the Ignite Fellowship is all about. It is a national program, so we have 2,000 tutors who we call fellows that are supporting students nationwide. And because of the partnership that we have here at the DA, actually more than 250 of them are working in Louisiana schools every day, so we're proud of that growth. It is a K-3 literacy model. Again, we're selecting college students nationwide, training them in the science of reading, ensure that they're ready and prepared to make a strong impact with the students that they're working with. And this is tutoring that's happening during the school day. So it's embedded in the calendar in every school where we operate. We're in 9 schools and 5 districts today. 100% of our principals are reporting academic gains as a result of the program. And something we're really excited about is that we all know the needs in the educator workforce for full-time certified educators. More than half of our tutors, as a result of this experience, are applying to join Teach for America. It is a catalytic experience. They're seeing the impact that they can make working with students firsthand, and they're now raising their hand to become full-time educators. So because it's new, because it's a pilot, I just wanted to give you some shape to the work that we're leading. Happy to entertain any questions, but again, thank you to the department for helping us grow. And the demand for schools is just so high. Thank you, Mr. Morris, for joining us to seeing it in action in March, or I'm sorry, back in October, and in March, we'll bring others to go see the work in action. So if you're curious about it, if you want to see the excitement of students as they engage with their tutors, with their fellows live, we would love to have you join us.
Mr. Bell?
Thank you. A couple of questions. My understanding is these are folks that are not necessarily trained in education. They may have a degree in math or science or something of that nature.
That's right, so they're current college students, and we put them through a selective process to assess their readiness to be able to work with students. That's very similar to our course selection model, if you're at all familiar with that. So it's a selective program, and then we train them in the foundations of the science of reading. And then actually their school site trains them in how to deliver the Tier 1 curriculum. So they're using the same curriculum that students are experiencing every day.
So does your national data indicate that there's a problem because they're non-certified teachers, or is this, do they run parallel with certified teachers in this training, in this effort to tutor children?
We really don't have a strong point of comparison right now because our program is exclusively college students, and then some alumni of Teach for America are serving as tutors who they would have been certified teachers, but that sample size is so small, we really can't make a
And
comparison.
then one last question, the money, you're funded separately? You're not, are you receiving any funds from the state or through the Department of Education or anything?
Yes, so, and correct me if I get this wrong, but we're funded through some of the real dollars, and then for about 60% of the cost of the overall program, we're privately fundraising.
Oh,
So
you're privately funded?
40% state funded or
40%.
federal.
That's right. Thank you.
Ms. Hall?
Thank you, Laura. I enjoyed that and for your good work. So in saying this, I'm just realizing that Ignite is provided by Teach for America. You are the vendor.
Yes.
So my next question would be the other 3 programs, Real Literacy, Accelerate, and America. Can you tell us who are the vendors for these 3 programs? So I would not have known that Ignite was Teach for America.
So Ignite is Teach for America, which is provided by the college students, and I'll differentiate there because I know we had some discussion around Steve Carter. The Steve Carter legislation says that the tutors have to be certified teachers, but this is outside of the Steve Carter program.
This is outside of Steve Carter, yes.
And funded by the real grant, and this tutoring happens during the school day. So the providers for real, we have a vendor list of approved providers for real based on those qualifications set from that grant. The providers for Accelerate are Zern and Booknook. Ignite is Teach for America. Amira is the Amira vendor. And then Steve Carter, we have a vendor list of over 50 providers who are currently qualified and have applied to participate in the Steve Carter. So it's a variety of vendors. I know Studyville is one of them.
So who owns Real?
Real is a federal grant that has been allocated to school systems, and they can use a Real provider of their choice. And then we have also utilized some of the Real funds for our project with TFA to use the Ignite program, which is utilizing the college tutors. So you can see we've really, across the board, invested in a variety of tutoring programs.
Other members? I just want to share my personal experience. I went to 2 campus visits where they were utilizing the Ignite program, and just very, very impressed, very consistent at both sites. You would think they were giving candy away to these kids. Just really zoned in on the screen and what they're doing, engaged with their little whiteboards and whatnot. Very, very impressive, so thank you for your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
All right. I think this closes out this item, correct? So we go to, am I doing math, right? So we're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda. So we can have a motion to introduce item 4.4, please. Ms. Miller, can I get a second? Ms. Holloway? Any opposed? There none. Item 4, Superintendent Drummond, do you want to speak to this one?
I think we need to pull up the 2023 legislative priorities. So we will soon be entering legislative session. We know that this is not new for you, but it is new for this particular board to enter into a legislative session together. It is an exciting, busy, sometimes frustrating time, but we feel like we've had some real wins over the last few years legislatively. The process that we use that was approved by you all in January basically calls for a process where the department will identify all of the education bills that have been filed. We will keep a tracker of those particular bills. We will have a meeting, which will most likely be dedicated to legislation at probably March, the committee meeting in March. It'll probably be embedded somewhere there. And at that point in time, we will go over all of the bills that we think are most relevant and give the board an opportunity to weigh in as a board on whether you would like to support, reject any of those particular bills. And from that, you will essentially authorize our agency to go to the table and speak on your behalf in support or opposition of particular bills. I will introduce Ben Lemoyne. Ben, raise your hand. Ben, you'll get to know Ben really well. Ben is our new Director of Governmental Affairs. He'll be the point person for us, our agency, over at the legislature this upcoming session. And so we will have all of those bills for you that have been filed. Probably, I know it has to be determined, but I think we're thinking about probably that Tuesday committee day for some time to talk about these bills. And you all will weigh in on opposition or support of those bills. Now, once we get into session, the process that has been approved is basically the officers will be involved. This is what we've used the last few years. The officers will be involved in a couple of calls weekly during session, where our team will present to them the bills that are up for discussion during that particular week, whether it's in House Ed or Senate Ed, or it could be something in appropriations or somewhere else. And we'll keep the officers informed, and the officers will then weigh into us on any particular thoughts they have on the approach that we use on those bills. And so over the course of the legislative session, we'll be in House Ed, Senate Ed, other committee members, and we'll be there to support. Most of the time when I go to the table, I'll be at the table under a white card, and I'll just be there to provide information from the department. You actually authorize Ben through process to speak on your behalf and to give your opinions as a board on where you stand on items. And of course, the BESE staff can do that as well, and you can do that as independent members of BESE, speaking for yourself during those times. The other thing that you will receive weekly during session, at the end of the week, you'll receive the tracker of the bills, and it will give you an update of any activity on those bills, whether it passed out of a committee, in what form it passed, if it failed in a committee, and then what would be next for those particular instruments. And so that's kind of overall how that process can work. Mr. Morris, if you and the board want to alter that in any particular way, you know, we're happy to help and support whatever that might look like. But that's kind of the process that we have developed right now. Now, last year, one of the things that the board asked us to do is to bring forward a recommendations of like guiding principles for the way in which the board should approach bills. When we look at a bill, when you guys look at a bill as a board, does it meet one of these priority areas? And if it does, then typically it's a bill you would want to support. If it doesn't, then it's one you might want to oppose, or you may just want to not engage with that particular bill at all for some particular reason. Ted, do you have the legislative priorities, not the department priorities, but no, not that. You should have a sheet.
We did have.
It's in the packet.
It may be in your packet. So I only have the second page of that in the back.
Let's pause on that one, and we can get BESE staff to help us with that reference document. For now, Superintendent, thank you for that summary for base case. And then I would encourage members to look at page 2, and it's like there's a spreadsheet after the literacy handout, a 2-page summary of the Excel spreadsheet, examples from last legislative session where the bills were listed, and then the author of the bill, the topic, bill description, and invested position on each one. And then the superintendent Brumley explained some of the positions were taken were either to support, not to support, or not to take a position. And then the other thing I would also, I guess, remind everyone, Superintendent Brumley mentioned, is that we can come to the table and we can represent the board. We can come to the table, we can represent our BESE district. We can come to the board, we can represent ourselves as an individual. So we want to be careful about that, when we do come to the table and speak to our legislators. So I just want to make sure we appreciate that's an option.
Hey, that might be page 55 or...
Yeah, on my printed packet, I just have the second page.
Yeah.
I don't have the first page, because there it is. So these are the principal statements that were adopted last year by the board. And so if you look, these are the set of principal statements that the board adopted last year. I don't have it in my printed packet. I have the second page, but on the screen, you can see those pages. I would like that.
I printed it from home.
Thank you, doing a large job in preparation. So last year's board adopted these principal statements, a minimum foundation program that prioritizes students and educators through a teacher pay raise, including differentiated pay options and increased operational funding, providing school and system leaders autonomy to make decisions responsive to local needs without the hindrance of undue red tape and bureaucracy, creating innovative ways to bolster the education pipeline through expanding access to the profession, taking into consideration reducing barriers to entry, eliminating undue processes, and streamlining the certification, elevating the educator profession by providing resources, professional development, and fostering a supportive environment to all educators, recognizing the critical role of teachers as the #1 in-school factor influencing the outcomes of students, and supporting educators by promoting a safe teaching environment free of disruption, unnecessary bureaucracy, and external distraction, continued implementation of rigorous state standards and courses of study aligned with college and workforce expectations as measured by high-quality assessments and learning opportunities aligned to such standards and expectations. A fair and honest accountability system that honors student performance, growth, and relevant measures of high school success, fostering innovation through maintaining charter school autonomy, maintaining parental rights in education, expanded opportunities for high school students to access career training, aligned to regional workforce demands, enabling them to enter the workforce and continue their career development through specialized training and post-secondary education, the ability of local school systems to make curriculum decisions and select instructional materials that support students' mastery of academic standards, the ability of local school systems to leverage technology resources to enhance teaching and learning and prepare students to be technology proficient and competitive in the digital age, fostering and maintaining a system of choice options for families to promote excellence for every child, maintaining and expanding high-quality early childhood education system that focuses on quality seats, kindergarten readiness, and accountability, enabling systems and schools to take the actions necessary to provide for safety of all students and staff, and retain its role as Louisiana's elementary and secondary education policy-making body. So those were the principal statements that the previous board has elected, and we're willing to support any particular way around these as they stand, or if there's a desire for us to support the board in adjusting any of these, we can do that. We just need to know direction on that.
Great. Members, any comments?
I got a couple
Dr. Bell.
quick points. We all know the fiscal note is critical to the decision-making process, and fiscal notes sometimes aren't available until very shortly before meetings. So I would encourage y'all to try to get to the board. We may take a position on a particular bill and support it, let's say, and then when finally that fiscal note pops up, we may not want to be in support. So I guess we have to empower our representatives in some fashion to execute on the decisions of the board, and I guess we have to defer to the officers to make that call. Because some of those, you're not going to be able to call a meeting. I mean, and then number two, the same thing goes with amendments to those bills. That may be the worst part. A bill could change character completely in 30 seconds, especially in the House.
It's in the Senate.
And
Let's watch the crossfire here, okay?
A little bit. And then the last thing I suggest, and this is just a suggestion, I suggest our officers, once we've prepared our list of bills and the structure, whether we're in favor or against it, you all meet with the chairman of the two committees and the vice chairman, just the officers, and go over our stuff ahead of time so that they know where we're coming from. That's all. A couple of little things.
Thank you for those insightful words from this side of the room.
Mr. Morrison.
Mr. Harris, you have a counter.
No. I would tell the board there's a really good resource, and that's the legislative website. So if you go on there and you find that bill, it has everything, with the financial notice put up and everything, you can review it there. But I will comment and piggyback on what Conrad said. We do need to be engaged as a board with the legislature on those bills that we oppose and that we are for. One of the most effective times I saw was when Dr. Jones was president. He was over at the legislative committees all the time.
You're trying to say I need an apartment?
Yeah, and try not to speak so much like an engineer when you're over there. But no, I think that we've got the right board together.
This crossfire.
I'm with you on that one.
Hey, Conrad, I told him, I said, we're gonna have to have an interpreter for you two.
Mr. Harris, one point here. On the tracker itself, there will be a hyperlink on each bill, and you can just click it, and it'll take you directly. We take care of that for you. And it'll take you directly to that, and you'll have fiscal notes show everything immediately available to you. And I want to call out what Mr. Appel said too. The board can take a position. We could go into our call with the officers can affirm that, go, and one word could change in that piece of legislation. And Ben's going to be, what what the heck am I supposed to do? And so he's going to have to make quick contact with you all, inform as much as possible. But there are times when that connection's not going to be made, and so he's going to have to make, and I'm going to have to make judgment decisions based on these principles, based on what happens. Because there's just not enough time sometimes when this thing happens so quickly.
Thank you for that. Ms. Armstrong?
Just a quick one, that tracker, as soon as the bill is filed, we'll get a copy so we can link and start reading. I don't want to start reading it the day of the committee meetings.
No, so as soon as the deadline for file has ended, we'll be working on it in advance, but beyond that point, we'll have all that ready, we'll get out to everyone.
Mr. Burkey?
All those things that you just read through, these have stood the test of time, it's been there for a while, it's brand new?
No, they've been there since last year's board meeting, when last year's board determined that these were the principles for that board.
And we'll obviously have some time to review them before the March 5th meeting to come back for additional comments. Other members' comments? Okay. I'd like to go to the public comment cards if we could. We've got Dr. Monty Sullivan from LCTCS. He's got information and he wishes to speak.
Chair Morris, Superintendent Brumman, members of the board, it is an honor and a pleasure to be with you as always. You have a tremendous responsibility. Sorry. I thought maybe I could use my teacher voice this morning. You guys can hear me now? Much better. It's good to be among friends. It's good to be among a group of people that I know are looking forward to a better Louisiana tomorrow than the one that we have experienced yesterday. That begins with focusing on our young people. Your community and technical colleges are here to partner. We are here to support. I think you will hear from a whole range of individuals, from our partners in the business sector to our partners in the community and policy space. Louisiana has work to do. I am here to say to you, your community and technical colleges are here to partner with you. Your superintendent has been a great partner throughout the years, and individuals around this table, we have had an opportunity to work together on different venues, different kinds of issues. The work that is ahead of us is the seminal work of building Louisiana to what it can be. We have a responsibility to ensure that those adults are getting into those jobs and that they are, as you asked the question earlier, what are those adults doing with those reports? My question is, what are they doing while their children are at school? Because oftentimes there are opportunities in our colleges for training, for education, for even literacy training for many of the parents. The fact of the matter is that we can have the nation's best early childhood education program for 6 hours a day, but if we don't have those children in a better environment the other 18 hours, we are wasting our time, energy, and effort. And so together, I suggest to you that we have work to do. And that literacy discussion that we had earlier doesn't just apply to young people. It applies to adults as well. There are plenty of adults that need that kind of work. In Louisiana, as you will hear, we have 41% of the people 25 to 64 who are not working, looking for work, or earning unemployment. Let that sink in. 41% of our people are on the sidelines. My question for you is this. Of all the great lessons that children learn in school and at home, how important is the lesson of watching a parent get up and go to work every day? How in the world do we expect children to know how to get up and go to work every day if a full 40% of our people are not doing it? Are some retired? Of course they are. Are some infirm? Yes. But we're 8th from the bottom in the nation. We have to do better here. We must put more people to work, ensure that more people have access to the skills and the training that they need in order to be successful in this economy. Because without success at the home, the work that we do at schools will be eroded. Thank you. I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have, but I'm also certainly glad to say I plan to be back early and often. I want to sit with you, and most especially, the one ask I have for you is let's focus our efforts on the school accountability metrics. The time of the AP exam being so darn important has passed in Louisiana. That's my personal opinion. We need to prepare kids to go to work and to participate in this economy. Let's make sure that our accountability metrics drive that. That's my ask of this group. Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Chair, I will turn back to you and I'm glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Members, any questions, comments? Thank you so much for coming out today and sharing that with us. We look forward to working with you going ahead. Next I've got Susie Schoen. She's got information that she wishes to speak.
I'd like to congratulate Ms. Sherwin as well on her new appointment to the cabinet and the Governor Landry administration workforce. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So please identify yourself.
I will absolutely do that. So thank you all very much for having me here. Thank you, Chair Morris and Superintendent Brumley. I'm Susie Schoen. I am, as of 1 month ago, the new secretary for the Louisiana Workforce Commission. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about our departmental priorities and how I'm thinking we might be able to better connect with the K-12 system, but I think this group here is really going to help inform me on how to do that most effectively. So I want to start with a few numbers, and Monty alluded to some of these. Right now, our unemployment rate is at 3.7%. That's the December number. That is the lowest December unemployment rate that we have ever calculated at the Louisiana Workforce Commission. There's a rule of thumb that unemployment rates lower than 4% essentially represent full employment, and everybody who's unemployed is really just moving back and forth between jobs. In November, we had 78,000 people out of work, and we had 112,000 job openings here in Louisiana. The math doesn't work. How are we going to find the people to fill the open positions that our Louisiana employers need to be able to fill in order to grow to their maximum potential and generate the kind of thriving economy that continues to create jobs? We have to provide the workforce in order to continue to create jobs. So where are those folks going to come from? K-12 is part of that solution, but I also want to talk about the labor force participation rate. So we talk about unemployment and we talk about labor force participation. So just a quick description of the difference there for folks that aren't immersed in this every day. The unemployment rate is the number of people actively looking for work divided by the number of people working. If you take those two numbers, people actively looking for work plus people working, and divide that by your adult population, you get the labor force participation rate. In Louisiana right now, that number is 58.9%. That's where Monty gets his 41% of our people sitting on the sidelines. And it's absolutely true. There's a lot of reasons why those folks are sitting on the sidelines. Some of the things that you've been talking about now in terms of literacy and numeracy are a really big part of that story. We've got a huge skills mismatch between folks that would like to be part of the workforce and those people who are able, or sorry, those skills requirements for the jobs that we're looking at. A huge chunk of that skills mismatch is in fields like the skilled trades. Skilled jobs that require frequently 2 years or less of post-secondary preparation. So Monty and I are good friends, and I was on his team until just a month ago. Before that, I worked for Louisiana Economic Development for about 10 years. So that's the perspective that I'm bringing to the table, is looking at workforce development from an economic development perspective. How do we grow the economy by addressing the needs of our workforce? So with that in mind, there are a lot of obstacles for those workforce non-participants trying to join the workforce. Many of them are highly motivated, but they just can't quite get there. There's a lot of social services and a lot of funding that's intended to help people get there, but a lot of those services are really siloed Often we're asking people to go to one part of a parish to receive one set of benefits, and then maybe drive to another parish to get the other set of benefits that they're eligible for. So better coordinating our social services and better understanding how each program is supposed to fit into the big jigsaw puzzle that can actually get people to work is one of our major priorities. I owe to the Department of Labor something called the Combined State Plan under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. It is intended to be a combined state plan, not the LWC plan or the SUSE plan, but a joint collaborative effort. So I have asked for the participation of Superintendent Brumley, Monty Sullivan, Kim Hunter-Reed, and my fellow agency heads who oversee a lot of these programs that I'm talking about so that we can develop a strategy around increasing the labor force participation rate in Louisiana, which is something of a proxy for the poverty rates here in Louisiana, addressing poverty through employment by better integrating social services and better getting help to the individuals in a way that makes sense for them and the way that they're living. This is not easy, as they say. It's simple, but it's not easy. So I will need a lot of help from a lot of people, including this board. One request that I hear and have been hearing very frequently from the employer partners that I've been speaking with is a better way to connect as early as possible with our young people through the K-12 system in order to really establish early on what the Louisiana economy looks like, what their regional economy looks like, and where the job opportunities really are in those regions. We have a lot of connections to people that really want to connect with you, but it can be challenging to figure out exactly how to navigate that process. So I would be very interested in exploring with the superintendent and with the members of BESE how we might create some systems that would allow for that to happen as easily as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Members, any questions for the Secretary?
I'd like to make a statement that is one of the elements, that second element, hit upon that. We have a fractured structure of state government, in my estimation, because listen to what you said about all the departments that are participating, and it's never been pulled together. So I'm hoping what you're suggesting that we can pull it together is really, going to work. It's super important. There's one element of economic development that we really do here at BESE in the department have an impact on, and that is you're trying to attract, especially corporate business. There's a huge negative when somebody wants to bring a corporation with a lot of jobs here and they look at public education as not a viable alternative, especially in some of our urban areas. So I think no matter what we do, we have to build a better public education system to help the economic development side, to bring jobs, and then we can cut that poverty rate. We're not going to cut it, just keep pumping welfare into the system. It's a rising tide lifts all boats, and we're all players in the rising tide, but we got to get it up. And from the education perspective, if we can over time get at least the expectation of quality public education changed, and then we can start attracting some big corporations. Mississippi just announced 1,000 jobs for Amazon. 1,000 jobs. They've got car manufacturing plants. They're beating our brains in. We've been sleeping a long time. It's time to wake up. So thank you. And certainly whatever we can do, we want to do that.
I do appreciate your words so much, and it is a challenge in terms of economic development to help people to understand that their children will receive a good education here in Louisiana. It is very important. I will say, I think where I come in on that question is addressing the parents. If we can get those parents into well-paying jobs the children's performance will improve simply as a consequence of providing economic stability to the parents. So it is a very complex and interlocking set of challenges that we face. And all of us will need to step up and pull on our particular ropes, so.
Other members? I did have one, you and I spoke before about this, but wanted to share it with other members as well. My takeaway from Monty's testimony basically was, could we help with tweaks to the accountability system so that we've got appropriate incentives in place for the school systems? My takeaway from your comments was, how do we make those opportunities more recognizable for parents and for students at an appropriate age when those decisions are being made, or ahead of when those decisions are being made? So the visual for me is that bridge between K-12 education and workforce. And so for me, one of the starting points there is to identify who all the players are to build that bridge, what each player's role and responsibility is, and how do they communicate with each other. So my question to you is there a work in progress or some sort of visual aid to help us to appreciate who all those players are, what do they bring to the party, and how are we all going to communicate together to build that bridge?
It's a good question. I do have, it's about 2 years old now, an attempt that I made in a previous position to illustrate all of the funding sources in Louisiana that can be directed towards education and workforce development. And it is actually an unmanageable visual. There is no way to look at it and make any coherent sense out of it. So the challenge is how we work through this maze of programs which remain really significantly siloed. And to Mr. Appel's point, a lot of the departments that oversee these programs are not even really properly aligned. So it's something we're going to have to work on. I'm not sure we're going to be able to sort of have one person understand every single piece, but we need to make sure that each person who understands their own set of programs is able to come to the table to integrate with the other people. I also do want to mention so much of the hard work that needs to be done here is hard work that has to be done at the local and regional level. I think demonstrating our joint commitment at the state level to working together is incredibly important to getting our folks on the ground working together, but a lot of it is just going to be people who choose to work together more effectively and start to braid the resources that they're working with.
You mentioned your conversations with Superintendent Brumley and Bonnie and Commissioner Reed. Do you have any sense of what the timeline would look like when you could come back to BESE and help us to appreciate that conversation and what it looks like going forward and what we can do to help?
So the combined state plan that is due to the Department of Labor is due every 4 years, and I am already going to be late on its delivery. So it is officially due on March 4th and has a 30-day public comment period. So you will realize that I have not put it out for public comment yet. I have assured the Department of Labor that it's going to be worth waiting for, but I don't want to be too late, right? And so we will have something to share very soon, but it's going to be broad strokes. And the actual development of practical strategies that are going to lead us to where we're going will be an ongoing process that BESE will be a significant part of.
Thank you. Members, any other comments? All right, Madam Secretary, thank you so much for sharing time with us today. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes, thank you.
Next, we've got Mary Beth Hughes from LAB, if you would. Please come forward and identify yourself.
Good morning, everyone. So great to be with you today. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Mary Beth Hughes. I serve as the Education and Workforce Development Council Director at LAB. I am new to this role, so if we haven't met, I hope we can do so soon. Thank you so much for having me. Just a little bit about Lobby and my organization. We serve over 2,000 businesses from across the state, everyone from Joe's Tire Shack to Oshner, and every Main Street establishment in between. We pride ourselves on the fact that 85% of our members are small businesses. We serve as what we like to call the voice of the business community at the Capitol. We look forward to session coming up. Historically, we've obviously been very involved in the education and workforce development space. And it is I would say, one of the top 3 concerns of our members. We hear on a daily basis that our businesses can't find qualified workers, and they have major concerns about our education system. And so I wanted to, you have a copy of this at your spot, but we created what we call the LA23 plan. This plan was introduced last fall, and we hope it can serve as a roadmap, with the goal being to put Louisiana on the path to becoming an economic leader in the South by 2030. That is a tall order, but we're confident that this has the solutions to get it done. The plan overall contains about 30 recommendations as to what Louisiana can do to bring businesses here to an earlier point. It was created by national policy experts, pollsters, and economists from all across the nation that have done this work for a long time. What you have at your desk is the education deep dive, and also includes workforce development recommendations. We look forward to working with Superintendent Brumley and have already had many discussions with him and Chair Morris as well, and look forward to continuing our work as before the legislative session. As far as the legislative session goes, there are a couple things that are on our radar that are big ticket items that we will be very, very involved in. The first being expanding choice for families. ESAs are coming up this session. We will be out in front of that. And then we also have some corporate charter legislation that we're excited about as well. As far as workforce development for this session, our goals, as mentioned by Ms. Schoen, career readiness, career exposure, and we just want to ensure that all students are ready for when they graduate to either, if they're not going on a 4-year path, that they are ready for a high-wage, high-skilled job as well. I do want to mention that I know that the department does a tracker as far as bills that they are watching. We do as well. We do a daily email during session, which contains bills we're watching, that we oppose, that we support, and the news of the day as well. So I encourage you to just sign up on our website, lobby.org. And if I can be of any help to you, my door is always open, and I look forward to getting to know each of you as we work together. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions? All right, thank you so much. Next I have Mr. Adam Knapp. Please state your name and everything.
Adam Knapp, I'm the CEO of the Committee of 100. It's great to see all of you, Mr. Superintendent, Chairman. It's great to be invited to join. I'll echo just briefly what you heard from President Sullivan and Secretary Schoen about the importance of this. I just want to come back to the thought about economic development for a moment. If you think about the U.S. South over the last 11 years, the growth rate of jobs across the U.S. South has been about a 30% increase in overall jobs across the U.S. South over the last 12 years. In Louisiana, we've grown by about 4%. If you look just at the last 8 years, there's been just an incredible growth trend in the South. The average growth rate across the South has been about 9% in just that period. Texas and Florida have grown close to 17 or so percent. The slowest growing state was our neighbor, Mississippi, that grew at just below 3%. Unfortunately, we lost jobs during that same period, the only state in the South to have that experience. Why am I talking to the Board of Education about jobs? We all participate in the continuum that's necessary to be a high-growth state for our residents, not only those that are here already, but the ones that could be here but for opportunity, to be able to see this as a place of opportunity. Not only to come here for the first time and enjoy our wonderful state, but those who have left for opportunity but would and could come back but for those things. We also, as you heard from President Sullivan, have a substantial portion of our population not engaged. What you heard Secretary Schoen referring to with our labor force participation rate equates to about 140,000 residents that if we were performing only at the U.S. average for labor force participation would be in our economy today, but are not. That's 142,000 of our residents that we're leaving behind. And so when he talks about 41%, you can put that in the real context of every community in our state. You can also see that the growth is substantially happening in some parts, but not in other parts of our state. And you all feel that in your own districts, the differences of what that performance looks like. In Louisiana, over that 8-year period we just went through, the fastest rates of growth have been in New Orleans, the North Shore, and Baton Rouge. We've suffered some unfortunately, hurricanes that have set us back in other parts of our state that are coming back, I think. But unfortunately, we've got a big chunk of our state that is not growing at the rate. So when we think about what does it look like for us to try to shoot for what you heard Mary Beth say a moment ago, toward being a high-performing economic state by 2030, let's just imagine we were able to grow by 10% over the next decade. We need to be looking for our economy to be getting in the neighborhood of 1 to 2% job creation consistently. We need to be doing that over the course of the next decade, year in, year out. To do that, we have to have the engagement of our workforce to accomplish that. And as you heard from I think President Sullivan very eloquently, it is really an effort that every part of our state government is going to have to deliver that outcome. It's going to have to be from you and the districts across our state, especially high school kids and middle school kids, learn about career opportunities as early as possible, helping employers know how to engage with our students to know what career paths we have, not only for the jobs that we have had historically, but the jobs that are going to be driving our economy and our nation for the years to come, that we need to always be mindful of how to change to serve those. We need to make sure that our Workforce Commission and our legislature and our Department of Economic Development are tightly coordinating with the Department of Education and Board of Regents on those job needs. We also need to make sure that we're thinking about what it takes for a small business to find access to those workers as they're searching. You could almost go across the entire economy today, and most of your employers will tell you, I could hire today, but for finding the people that I need to drive the growth of my, it's a great position to be, growth of my business, but we don't really have a system that delivers them, those people, in a really streamlined way. It's harder the smaller your business is for you to find access to that talent. And then lastly, I would say is we need to be smart about helping folks learn about re-entering Louisiana and all those job opportunities that you heard that we have, that we don't have people to fill those positions. Not only that we're delivering those people within our state, but also encouraging folks to return for those opportunities, as we've heard Governor Landry talk about this come back Louisiana mantra. We need to be thinking about that, and in-migration has got to be a big piece of it. So I would say, when we think about the opportunities to drive economic development, let's think about those three levers. How do we all engage in those things from high school all the way to reentry for citizens coming to our state for opportunity? But we really have to move at lightning pace because we are behind. We can't just keep up. We've got to leapfrog to get there. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next up, got Justin McCarkle, Youth Force Fellows.
Good morning. Yes, we are still at morning. Good morning, Chair Morris, Superintendent Brumley, and board members. I am Justin McCorkle, and I am here serving as the Senior Advisor for Community Engagement with Youth Force NOLA. We are the designated career connected learning intermediary in New Orleans, and in my role I support our Policy Director, David Shepard, who many of you are already familiar with. I'm here today to tell you all welcome, and also introduce you to a little bit of our work that we do at Youth Force NOLA. There's been a recurring theme here, Chair Morris, workforce development, and the bridge to education. Youth Force NOLA, we fuel a network of school, training provider, higher education, government, and employer partners who all work together to provide young people with access to learning experiences they need to explore and pursue a wide range of post-secondary opportunities. Our core program support is focused on enabling young people, particularly in New Orleans, to access a continuum of career preparation that includes soft skills training, technical training, and meaningful work experience. To make this possible, we pursue a career-connected learning policy agenda that not only communicates the value of career-connected work, but also organize the data to measure success in partnership with a statewide network of shareholders. Our co-founder and president, Ms. Kay Swinburne, has sent you all an email in advance of this retreat that bullets out our policy priorities in the legislature for 2024. With that, we encourage you to maintain the legislative principle of expanding opportunities for all of our high school students to access the career training necessary that enables them to enter the workforce and continue career development through specialized training and post-secondary education. We look forward to continuing to work with not only the board, but also the Department of Education, and I welcome any questions you all may have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just want to bring to the members' attention the handout that he referenced. Everyone should have one. And it looks like there's 6 bullets on there that you guys are asking BESE to address. So as we go through those, we look forward to future engagement, and we appreciate your work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming out today. Next up, got Mr. Barry Irwin.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to visit with you again, and appreciate the work that y'all are already putting in on your priorities and principles going into the legislative session. I'm president of Council for a Better Louisiana, and many of you are probably familiar with CABLE, but for those of you who are not, we are a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that works on public policy at the state level. For some of you, we were able to do a presentation a few weeks ago about some of the history of education reforms in Louisiana. We've been involved in just about all of those education reforms over that entire history, so that's a big part of our mission and the work that we have been doing really over the last 25 to 30 years. I would say that in terms of the priorities and the discussion that y'all have already had, we're very much aligned with that. I think to a large degree, the priorities that y'all have identified and the ones that y'all are talking about are the same as us, and we've seen that, I think, over the years on a lot of ways. Certainly on the literacy piece we talked about today, I think you're going to talk a little bit more about the math. It was great hearing the conversation about the tutoring piece and what we can do on that front. One of the things to kind of echo some of the remarks you've seen, heard already, we're very interested still in the high school piece, that whole part with career and technical education, but also dual enrollment, apprenticeships, internships, work-based learning. Those things can really make a difference in our high schools. We've been talking about that here with y'all and the legislature in some ways for some time. It's kind of been difficult to get some of those pieces of that over the hump. I'm really hopeful and hopefully, optimistic that with where we are right now, the situation that we have with the new board and other things, that we can actually get over the hump on some of those things, particularly, to help our kids, help those kids too who are maybe not on the right career path or the right diploma path in high school, to try and get them more on the appropriate path that would really be best for them. And I think the career piece, if we can enhance and expand that in our high schools, would be a big part of it. We serve on another subject, on teacher recruitment and retention task force. That's a big piece of what we're involved with as well. I know y'all are probably going to talk about that a little bit more too. That's an area where I think that we've made some good policy changes, and I think we're beginning to see some good results there, but it's one where I think we really need to keep our focus on that too. And the last thing I would say, of course, is early childhood. We've been very involved with that from the outset. That remains a priority of our organization. I know it's not as fully in your area as it is maybe in terms of the legislature and kind of the investment piece in it, but certainly we want to be partners going forward with all the other ancillary kind of support work that y'all do on the early childhood front. Finally, I would close by saying, like I say, we've been involved in education issues for a long time. There are a lot of groups that are involved in education, and there are a lot of opinions about education, as you either know or you will come to learn more quickly very, very shortly. We have opinions too, obviously, but we're also about solutions. We can talk forever about this or that and get hung up on this point or that point, and we certainly will along the way. But at the end of the day, our organization feels like that we need to be a part of moving the ball forward. So we are about solutions and trying to work with you to do whatever we can, whether it involves compromise or just rolling up our sleeves and doing whatever, to try and move the ball forward, kind of get us across the finish line to the degree that we can on every one of these issues, And we look forward to working with you and being a resource and just hopefully help move the ball forward on a lot of these things we've kind of been stuck on for some number of years. But thanks very much and good luck with all of your work.
Thank you, sir. Members, thank you for coming out today. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your support. Next, we've got Leslie Gill. She's got information and wishes to speak.
Good morning, thanks for having me. I'm Leslie Hill, I'm the Civic Affairs Director at the Louisiana Association of Public Charter Schools. LAPCS is a nonprofit member organization that represents charter schools throughout the state. We have been around in existence for about 16 years. Other charter schools have been around since 1995 in Louisiana. We represent about 150 charter schools across the state and 94,000 students attending those schools. Charter schools are a little different, held to a higher accountability to us because they get closed if they don't perform academically or if they don't perform financially or through the proper governance of their board in school. So we support strong accountability, having said that, and that an accountability system should support the academic outcomes of students as well as provide data and feedback for teachers so they can help move those students forward. I know that there will be some accountability, y'all are discussing making some accountability changes this year, and we look forward to working with all of you. I think this group is super impressive from what I've seen in the 2 meetings that y'all had, and I think there's going to be some really positive movement for Louisiana.
Well, we appreciate that positive encouragement for sure. Members, any comments? All right, thank you so much. Lastly, but not least, Madeline Kars-Batson. Madeline? Please identify yourself and your organization.
Good morning, afternoon, you're testing my vision to know if it's actually afternoon yet, but good morning, everyone. I'm Madeline Kars-Batson. Thank you for having me, Superintendent Brumley and President Morris. I am the Policy and Research Director at the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. The Policy Institute is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to ensuring that Louisiana's young children from birth to age 4 are best prepared for success in school and in life. At the Policy Institute, we develop policy proposals informed by data, research, best practices, and the experiences of other states to improve the outcomes of Louisiana's youngest citizens, and further provide educational and outreach activities based on the recommended policy solutions. As shared during the previous update on literacy in our state, only 30% of Louisiana's children arrived to kindergarten meeting critical benchmarks in 2023. Though I am really pleased to hear that our mid-year benchmarks are looking much better. But this does mean that our teachers are immediately responsible for remediation with 70% of our children from day one. And unfortunately know that oftentimes when students start behind, they tend to stay behind. For over a decade, Louisiana has made great strides in improving quality and accountability for early care and education across our state, in no small part due to Act 3 passed in 2012. In that, we thank you. In that time, BESE, the department, and early childhood educators across the state have worked together to adopt rigorous, high-quality curriculum, increase teacher training and support, and implement an accountability system. But not enough of our young children and their working parents are able to access high-quality programs and benefit from our improved early childhood system. We know that when children, particularly those who start at age 3 or earlier, experience high-quality early education, they are more likely to enter kindergarten ready to learn, graduate high school, have higher earnings in adulthood and better health outcomes, and are less likely to engage in criminal activity. Lack of affordable, quality early child care costs our state millions of dollars every year because our parents are not able to reliably participate in the workforce. However, studies show that there is a 13% annual return on investment for early care and education programs. Investing in these early programs means that we will spend fewer state dollars over the lifespan of the child. Rather than spending money on remedial, correctional, or adverse health services, let's spend money on building a bright future for our children. As you think about your priorities this year, we hope that you continue to support a high-quality early care and education system, building on our collective work to increase quality, accountability, and access. If you would like to see our high-quality providers in person, we know childcare providers across the state who would eagerly welcome you to see their joyful, educational environments that they have created for our youngest learners. Children only get their early childhood years once. We have the opportunity to make Louisiana a place where children and their parents thrive. And we believe that together we can achieve great things for our children and their families. I'm happy to share any of the research mentioned today and any other information about early care education that you may be interested in. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Members, thank you for joining us today. That's all of our public comment. There's no exception. We'll go to the next item, which would be Dr. Mackey, who's got a very interesting presentation for us. I understand that lunch has arrived. So members, I would ask you to consider that we take consider a motion to take lunch, come back, and then close out with Dr. Mackey's report and the math report. If you would consider that.
A second.
Got a second? Any opposition? All right, let's break for lunch and come back in 30 minutes?
Yes.
30 minutes? All right, 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.